Freeze it right there. A young woman in a state hall, both hands wrapped around a framed sheet of paper, and every camera in the room suddenly unsure whether it is allowed to keep rolling on her face. She is 21. She has just been handed the highest civilian nod her government knows how to give an athlete, and she is losing the fight to keep her voice steady. Her name is Alexandra Eala, world number 28. No one carrying a Philippine passport has ever been ranked higher in professional tennis. 60 seconds before this, at the microphone, she told the room she is not usually the nervous type when she has to talk. Then the tremor gave her away. This channel lives in that tremor, and in the country standing on the other side of it. If you found Eala before the rankings did, before the palace, before the flag turned up beside her name on the WTA board, subscribe and plant your flag in the Filipino tennis corner. Because the version of this night you got from the headlines left out the part that actually matters. Start with the sentence, almost every outlet sanded down into a feel-good soundbite. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. gave Eala a presidential citation. It is a genuine state honor. It exists, it has a history, it has gone to boxers and weightlifters and the handful of names this country files its sporting pride under. But to hand it to Eala, somebody in that office had to type a line the document had never carried before. She was named the first Filipino woman to attain unprecedented success on the international professional tennis circuit. That phrase had no prior home in a Philippine citation. She is the reason it now exists. And Marcos, standing at her shoulder, said the awkward truth into a live feed. Half laughing, he admitted there was no playbook for a moment like this, that they had more or less improvised the whole ceremony just so there would be a reason to get a photograph beside her. Sit with that for a second. The head of state, in his own palace, confessing that the ritual meant to honor this player had to be built from nothing because the country had never grown anyone whose achievements the old templates could contain. That single admission is the whole thing in miniature. This was not a government rewarding a champion. It was a government scrambling to catch up to one. Now wind the clock back 9 days, because none of this materialized out of thin air. It was hit into existence on grass, in London, in front of the whole sport. Wimbledon, center court. Eala arrives ranked down outside the top 40 and pulls the defending champion out of the hat. Iga Świątek, number 3 on the planet, the name the entire draw bent around. What follows is on the WTA's own record and was on BBC Sport, on Olympics.com, and across every major Philippine outlet within the hour. Eala beats her 7-6 in an opening tiebreak that clawed all the way to 9 points, then 6-2 to close it. 2 sets to love, over the reigning champion, on the sport's most sacred court. Weigh what that result actually is. Świątek is not a lucky draw. She is a former world number 1, a multiple major winner.
Iga conquers the grass and becomes a Wimbledon champion.
The favorite the bracket was designed to protect, and a player ranked in the 40s took her apart on grass, the surface that is supposed to shield the big names. The opening set turned on a 2-point swing in the breaker. Then, instead of gripping the wheel and hanging on, Eala floored it and ran the second away, 6-2. People outside the top 40 are not supposed to do this to defending champions under that roof. The footage says she did. She did not stop at one scalp either. She pushed on into the round of 16, the first player from her country, of either gender, ever to reach the second week of a major, before Jasmine Paolini, Italy's world number 17, edged her in 3, 6-4, 4-6, 6-3 on that very same court. That is the first piece of evidence. Keep it in view. The ranking is the second, and it shuts the door on the word fluke. 28 is not a firework. It is a step she climbed to over roughly 18 months of patient work. Back at the start of 2026, at the ASB Classic in Auckland, she reached the top 50 for the first time. She followed that with a maiden WTA 125 title in Guadalajara, then a second one in Birmingham in June, beating her own doubles partner, Nikola Bartonkova, to lift it. Open her official WTA page, and the season line reads 30 wins against 18 losses, with prize money for the year edging toward $1.3 million. Those are not the numbers of a nobody who caught fire for a week. They are the numbers of a top 30 player whose ceiling nobody has managed to find. The third piece is where the evening quietly stops being about tennis. Slow down for this part. At the microphone, Eala turned away from every stat in the room. Not Świątek, not the ranking, not the money. She spoke about the man who first taught her the game, her grandfather.
And maybe for someone like Iga, who has won so many slams, or maybe someone like Serena or Venus, this achievement may seem small, but...
Roberto Maniego, gone now. The one she called Papa Lolo. She described the afternoons after school, her and her brother hitting under his eye at the Rizal Memorial Courts in Manila. And then she said the line that shot across Filipino social media inside the hour, that she used to show up to train with her brother and her grandfather every day after class, in her ruffled socks and her light-up shoes and her chubby cheeks. Say a sentence like that in a hall wired for state broadcast, and watch what it does. It drops a small, private childhood image into the middle of a national ceremony. By morning, it was a Philippine Star headline, cut into a clip by People Asia, carried further by Sports on Air MNL. She was not manufacturing a moment. She was standing the little girl in the flashing sneakers right next to the woman the president was decorating, and letting the whole room feel the gap between the two. Then Marcos took the microphone and did something presidents almost never permit themselves. He stepped off the pedestal. "I am a fan," he said, "so I am gushing. Sorry, I am a genuine fan of yours." Those are his exact words, lifted straight from the Presidential Communications Office release and backed afterward by the Inquirer, GMA News, and ABS-CBN. This is not fan account paraphrase. This is the leader of a nation of 110 million people, on the record, saying he would be happy just to watch her hit. He stretched further than a photo op. He said he hopes one day to see her play in person, that it would not even need to be a grand slam, any tournament, any court, and that simply watching her practice would be enough. Read the register of that. A president casting himself as a spectator in the stands, describing what it would mean just to see her strike a ball. And the citation itself, drafted for this one night, rewards reading closely, because not a word in it is accidental. She is honored for exceptional talent, for perseverance, for unwavering determination, for lighting a path for the next wave of Filipino athletes to chase excellence through discipline and work, for carrying pride, honor, and joy to the nation. No template, a document written from scratch, for her. Then he landed the line that set the tone for the whole evening, that she has reminded Filipinos how remarkable a people they are, because they produce someone like her, that all 110 million of them stand behind her, and made on camera, entered into the public record. So pull the lens back, because that promise outweighs the framed paper. What does a top 30 Filipino tennis player actually move? That is not a fuzzy, sentimental question. The answers are concrete and physical. Tennis has always sat off to the side of this country's athletic self-image. Boxing gave it Pacquiao. Weightlifting gave it Hidalin Diaz. Basketball has generations of leagues and courts and money behind it. Tennis had gifted juniors and the odd doubles run, but never a singles player who put the Philippine flag on the WTA board beside a number this low. And the ripple effects of that are not theoretical. They live in the sports. A Filipino parent now lists as possible when a child asks what they could go after. They live in which courts get repaved, which academies find funding, whether the Sports Commission redraws a line in its budget. Marcos opening that door on the record is the state doing a thing it had no script for. But here comes the honest counterweight, because this corner does not hand you a fairy tale. Rewind to the tail end of January 2026, 6 months before the Palace. Eala steps onto the courts of that same Rizal Memorial Complex, the place Papa Lolo first put a racket in her hand, as the marquee name at the Philippine Women's Open, a home-soil WTA 125, and she loses. Quarterfinal, to Camila Osorio, 6-4 in the opener. She had dedicated the week to her grandfather, and she went out on his courts, in front of the country she was trying to lift. By her own telling, it was one of the roughest stretches of her early season. Half a year later, she stood in a state hall and spoke the name of those exact courts to the president's face, which loops the story back to the frozen frame we started on. The citation in her grip, her voice thickening, the president wearing the grin of a man who organized an event and slowly understood it was too small for the person it was built around. The Sports Commission chairman, Patrick Gregorio, in the room to see it. Her agent, Carter Lynn, present. Her parents, Mike and Riza, a few seats away. The First Lady, Liza Araneta Marcos, watching in the background. So here is the question worth fighting over in the comments. What is Alex Eala, really, at 21? Call her a first and you miss it. Call her a milestone, a tidy inspirational headline, and you shrink her. Every one of those labels is too small for what moved through that hall. She is a country redrawing its own picture of what a Filipino athlete can be, how high, in which sport, under which lights. The government had to invent a protocol for her precisely because the ones already on the shelf would not stretch to fit. 28 is the highest any Filipino has ever reached in the pro game, and no one has located the ceiling yet. And the work does not pause for a ceremony. On the 27th of July, barely a fortnight past the palace, she is set to walk onto court at the Mubadala DC Open in Washington. The next stop is already booked. But this time, the bag she packs holds more than a racket. She carries a state honor written for her alone, a president's public vow of support, and the memory of a palace that had to make up its own ritual on the spot, simply because she had walked into it. If you want to see where this runs next, Washington, the US Open, the number she takes into autumn, hit subscribe and hold your seat in this corner, because the story that opened in that ceremonial hall on the 13th of July is nowhere close to its last page, and the moment the next chapter breaks, you will get it here first.